Okay, well, we have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order.
Jeff should be here, he was at Rotary.
What was he? And just to let everybody know, hi Carrie. I'm gonna be leaving early, I've got an appointment, I couldn't reschedule at 2 o'clock with clients, so I'm gonna have to run to that. I already let Adam know that he's gonna be taking the helm of the ship. So I guess the first thing to do would be to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Are there any changes, comments, concerns?
What was the, I'll make that motion to
Approve the minutes.
approve the minutes.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll make a
Rodney?
second.
No.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Make a second.
Carried. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Next item of business would be to approve the agenda for what we're going to do today. Any changes,
Oh, that's yours.
discussion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the agendas.
Okay, there's a motion to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? Oh, first, is there a second?
I will.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. So the next item is discussion on, is it 6 through 10 or 7 through 10?
Through the end.
So Article 7, 8, before we get started on Article 7, is there any holdover comments, questions from the last meeting, anything anyone thought of they'd like to bring up? Hearing none, I will read Article 7 for the record as it's stated in the 1991 or 2 Memorial Charter Draft, which reads, Article 7, Severability Clause. If any section or part of a section of the Charter shall be held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, such holding shall not affect the remainder of this Charter except to the extent that an entire section or part of a section may be inseparably connected in meaning and effect with the section or part of section to which such holding shall directly apply.
I think that's a pretty standard severability clause. I think it makes sense to have it. I don't see any issues with the way it's written.
Okay?
Yeah. Just says if you cut one piece out, the rest is still in effect.
Any changes anyone wants to make to the article?
I move we accept it as read right here.
Okay. There's a motion to adopt Article 7 into the current Home Rule Charter verbatim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption of Article 7 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. We'll move on to Article 8, which is plenary and implied powers of the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners shall have plenary power to enact and make all proper and necessary ordinances, resolutions, and orders to carry out and give effect to the express and implied powers granted in this charter to the end that a complete, harmonious, and effective county government may be initiated, installed, operated, and maintained in the county, and thereby project and safeguard the rights, interests, safety, morality, health, and welfare of the county and its inhabitants.
I see that this was in a couple of other home rule charters, but not in most. What would be the reasoning that you would need this in?
Well, I think it's speaking to things that are implied but not made explicit. So if you'll remember, there was a previous, there was that one paragraph at the end when it listed out all of the things that we have the power to do.
Yep.
This is almost duplicative of that, but as its own separate clause, saying that anything that is not made explicit, but should be implied by like a competent reading of the intent, you know, that those powers exist. Is that fair to say, Karen?
That's a fair assessment of it.
Is Article 8 any value to it? Can we at least leave it out? It's already been taken care of in the ones ahead.
Yeah.
And I noticed in the old home rule that they were doing back, and they had crossed it off. Do not keep this under the draft. So they must have been discussed at that time.
I think if we were to keep it, the only change that I would want to make, or argue that should be made, is to strike the word morality. Because I don't think that it falls within the jurisdiction of county government to determine what is morality.
Oh, I think that argument could be made. Safety, morality laws, those fall under that. I don't, to answer your question, Rodney, I don't think it needs to be in there because the powers, plenary power is an absolute power granted to a governing board anyways. And you've got your enumerated list of express powers, it's going to be implied that there are means to get to those express ones, so I think it's fine that it's not in there. That's my
I'll move that we
2 cents.
delete it.
And I would second that. I would strike it as well.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to refute the adoption of Article 8 as listed in the previous home rule charter. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of its removal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to Article 9, which is on the topic of succession in government, and is listed Section 1, Rights of Officers and Employees Preserved. Nothing in this charter, except as specifically provided, shall affect or impair the rights or privileges of officers, employees, or employees of the county, or of any office, department, or agency existing at the time when this charter takes effect, or any provision of the law in force at the time when this charter shall take effect, and not inconsistent with the provisions of this charter in relation to the appointment, removal, pension, and retirement rights, civil rights, or any other rights or privileges of officers or employees of the county or any office, department, or agency. Section 2, continuance of present officers. All persons holding executive and administrative office at the time this charter takes effect shall continue in office and shall continue the performance of their duties until provisions shall have been made by the Board of Commissioners for the performance or abolition of duties in some manner or the discontinuance of such office. Section 3, continuance of present offices, department, or agencies. Any office, department, agency, or boards heretofore existing shall continue to exercise powers and duties the same as were heretofore exercised, and shall have the power to continue any business, proceedings, or other matters within the scope of its regular powers and duties until such office, department, or agency shall be changed or abolished by the Board of Commissioners. The powers conferred and the duties imposed on any office, department, or agency of the county by the laws of this state shall, if such office, department, or agency be abolished by this charter or under its authority, be thereafter exercised and discharged by the office, department, or agency designated by the Board of Commissioners. Section 4, continuance of contracts. All contracts entered into by the county prior to the taking effect of this charter shall continue in full force and effect. Section 5, pending actions and proceedings. The adoption of this charter shall not abate or otherwise affect any action or proceeding, civil or criminal. It's weird that it doesn't seem like that in the full sentence. Pending when it takes full effect or brought against the county or any office, department, or agency or officer thereof. Section 6, ordinances to remain in force. All ordinances, resolutions, and regulations of the county in force at the time of this charter that takes effect and not inconsistent with the provisions thereof are hereby continued in force until the same shall be duly amended or repealed.
discuss them section by section.
I
Yeah.
think that's a good idea.
Can I can I make a suggestion to strike and replace with Article 11 from Cass County, because it's shorter and easier?
Whoa. Oh, we had that same thought.
Yeah, I mean, I would make the argument that this as written is extremely poorly written. And hard to
Honestly,
read.
this whole thing is for literally just the time that we enact this charter, and after that, it's basically useless.
Right, but, yeah, but I'm just saying that this is like almost impossible to read, like I felt like maybe I was having a
Yeah.
stroke while trying to read it.
And we don't like that.
So I move that we strike and replace with Article 11 from Cass County's local charter.
Would you please read that out loud?
Absolutely. Section 1, rights of officers and employees preserved. Nothing in this charter except as specifically provided will affect or impair the rights, privileges, duties, or authorities of officers and employees of the county or of any office, department, agency, board, or commission existing at the time of this charter takes effect. Section 2, continuance of contracts. All contracts entered into the county prior to the taking effect of this charter will continue in full force and effect. Section 3, pending actions and proceedings. The adoption of this charter will not abate or otherwise affect any action or proceeding, civil or criminal, pending when it takes full effect, brought by or against the county or any office, department, agency, or officer. Section 4, resolutions and policies to remain in force. All county resolutions and policies in force at the time of this charter takes effect and not inconsistent with this charter will continue in force until amended or repealed.
Okay. So there's a motion to adopt in place of Article 9, adopting Article 11, is that right?
Correct.
Of Cass County's Home Rule Charter. Is there a second?
Well,
Second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of adopting Cass County's Article 11 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. Article 10, amendments and repeal. This charter may be amended or repealed by a proposal of the Board of Commissioners or by petition bearing signatures of qualified voters at least equal to 2% of the population of the county within 30 days of a receipt of a valid petition or approval of the proposal by the Board of Commissioners to amend or repeal. The Board of Commissioners shall publish any proposed amendment or repeal once in the official newspaper of the county. At least 60 days after publication, the proposed amendment or repeal must be submitted to a vote of the qualified electors of the county at the next primary or general election. The electors may adopt or accept or reject any amendment or repeal by a majority vote of the electors voting at the election. Any proposal to amend or repeal a home rule charter may not be submitted to the electorate more often than every 2 years. No amendment of a home rule charter may shorten the term for which any official was elected or reduce the salary of the official's office for that term.
Reading ours, it's far more complicated, I think, than it needs to be. I was just looking at the, Cass County has it written basically just in the manner provided by state law, so I was looking to see if there is a specific manner in state law. I would assume there has to be in the century code
Yeah.
portion of it, so I don't know why we would have to lay out all the guidelines perfectly, because I guess we have the right to do it, since this is gonna be in a home rule, but if the state has a way to go about it and it makes sense. The only thing I would say is, in looking at how this is written, it says at least equal to 2% of the population of the county. That's a pretty low threshold.
Yeah.
Because we're asking for 15% of the electors on, like, just for a change. Because we're looking at what, 10 and 15. 15% number is higher than even 2%, so you can repeal it easier than you can change it.
Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
right.
Cass County's reads 15% of the last gubernatorial election, which I think is reasonable, because if you're trying to make any change, then at that big change at that threshold rather than a
I
referral.
think that our threshold should be worded exactly the same as our threshold was for the other one, so it's exactly
Yeah.
the same, so 15% or is it 300, whichever is greater.
Yes.
Just so that there's consistency
Yeah, I
across
agree,
the.
yeah, just for consistency's sake, I agree. I was just looking here at Central Dakota to see what the guideline is for removal right now.
Bring my computer down.
I brought mine and watching.
Oh, that's good.
See, it's in chapter 11, correct?
For the voting, for the change.
It'd be under
home rule,
counties,
it's
because it
under
would be
11,
specifically under
counties.
home rule
Yeah.
counties.
11,
Let's see. Enforcement, general powers preserved. Charter commission, methods of proposing, pressure, submission, delegation, amendment or repeal would probably be.
Okay, well, I have to go, so chairman is dead, long live the chairman.
It says, the home rule charter adopted by any county may be amended or repealed by a proposal by the governing body of the county or by petition of the number of electors provided in section 1109.101. Oh, they're gonna make me run up here and look at how many people now. Oh my goodness. Okay, this says 2% of the population of the county as well. So that's what the state guideline is. Submitted to and ratified by the qualified electors of the county, petition to amend or repeal the home rule charter must be submitted to the governing body of the county within 30 days of receipt of a valid petition or approval of a proposal to amend or repeal the home rule charter. The governing body of the county shall publish any proposed amendment or repeal of the home rule charter once in the official newspaper of the county. At least 60 days after the publication of proposed amendment or repeal must be submitted to a vote of the qualified electors of the county at the next primary or general election. The electors may accept or reject any amendment or a repeal by a majority vote of qualified electors voting on the question at the election.
Okay, that's pretty close to a copy paste from what we had in 91.
Very similar, yeah. The only thing I would say is, so if we wrote it like Cass County did and say in a manner provided by state law, can we still clarify that we want the higher threshold for petition numbers? Or do we have to spell out that we don't want to follow state law in that particular circumstance?
I think if you wanted it the higher threshold, you should have it spelled out.
That's what I was thinking. Do we almost have to do exactly what's on the one previous,
Article.
Yeah.
that Article 10 previous, and then just put in the 15% or 300 then, and just kind of,
And I like adding in the two readings also, rather than the one.
In the paper.
Yeah, read, post, read again, that we had for, was it Article 4?
Yeah, 5, 4, 5,
One of those two.
yeah.
That seems like a very straightforward process. The one question mark that I had is at least 60 days after publication, the proposed amendment or repeal must be submitted to a vote. Yet it also says at the next general election. I might be misreading this, but which is it?
I
Could be
think,
either or.
yeah, I think basically it's stating that if the county residents decide they want to repeal, get their stuff together, bring it in, that they can't do it like on the 1st of October and
Sure.
expect it to be on the general election. Just because there's no way, because the ballots have to be prepared.
Yeah.
And that would be a regular ballot question, correct?
Oh,
Should we change the 60 days into 64 days? Being that state law and everything else to go on the ballot?
Yeah, let's do that.
Because I think it's reasonable to sync up all those dates. So basically, it's just saying if you want to repeal it, you're going to have to be 30 days before 64 days for the publication and everything. So essentially, if you wanted to get it on the general, you'd have to have it in like 1st of August is when the petitions would have to be turned in that way.
Or the same way for primary, if you
Yeah.
decided to do it.
Yeah, it would basically have to be,
Just
because April
64
9th,
days before any election,
Yeah.
put it.
because April 9th is 64 days previous this time, so you basically would have had to have petitions in March 8th. If we were gonna want to repeal.
Oh, yeah.
Because it has to be 30 days previous for publication and then 60 days previous, right? If I'm reading that correctly. Yeah, so basically within, it says within 30 days of the receipt. Oh,
So within 30 days, they have to publish it.
Oh, valid petition.
oh, and I suppose that's written that way simply because some commissions aren't gonna meet.
Yeah.
You know, only once a month, so it gives them 30 days, so their next meeting, they can say, make the motion to put it in the paper then.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be a problem here because we meet every 2 weeks.
Yeah, the whole 60 days and next election thing was
No, I get where you're
confusing.
coming from. Yeah, it's basically, I think, just stating that we have to give the auditor time to be able to get it on the ballot, because
Yep.
otherwise you have to print up a bunch of separate ballots, and they would all have to be, you know,
And counted.
they couldn't be optical scanned, they'd have to be hand counted, and then this would probably be a big thing, so you'd have to hand count like probably 4,000 or 5,000 ballots,
Yeah.
and that would be,
All within a 2-hour time frame.
yeah, that would be no fun.
Well, there is a time frame.
Yeah.
We're gonna put that in there.
Yeah,
45 minutes.
I'm like, yeah, I don't go.
Election
I
shall
don't
be
go
certified
until
within
it's done.
45 minutes of the final vote
You're like the
cast.
guy from Pennsylvania last night.
I know.
Oh, we're gonna count them tomorrow. Well, why aren't you counting them today? Well, we're gonna count them tomorrow. I think he was too polite to say, I'm tired and I wanna go home. So what are the wishes, I guess, of everyone? What are we thinking?
That's Article 10, what we're working on right now.
Yes.
Correct.
Well, I don't see anything why it isn't good just the way it's wrote there. If we wanna add a different percentage, that would be the only thing I could see.
And then just change that like 60 days to 64 so it matches up with the other ballot issues that we're always talking about.
I think so.
Is that reasonable?
I guess so.
Okay, and then I'm just looking how we should, so,
Why do some, and I'm just asking because I'm kind of confused on it, you know, going through some of our home rule examples that we've had, how come, some of them are more generic and some of them have the, you know, the 30 days of the receipt of the 64 after publication? Like for instance, which one is this?
Walsh Road.
Like Williams County, for example, they didn't have anything in there listed. Theirs is pretty generic and just says they need 15%. So are they just going by common knowledge that you have to follow the
I
state?
think that you can take a variety of approaches when you're trying to draft any type of a governance mechanism, and some approaches are less is better. Like at the outset, there's a whole lot of general stuff here, but we're not going to tout any numbers to make people's eyes blurry or to make them concerned that this is something different when in reality it's reality.
Yep.
And then there's another approach where you think certain things should just be spelled out and more information to people is better. So I think it's just a matter of how maybe that particular group decided best to present it.
Okay. I was just
Just a
curious
thought.
why they.
yeah, and I guess my inclination would be that essentially, for, when there's a lack of clarification, there's clarification previous in the document that says you're gonna fall back to state law. And state law steps out the 30 days, 60 days in their statute. So essentially by saying nothing, you're saying we're gonna follow whatever the state says, so other than particularly we want that 15%. That's how I would think of it, I guess.
So if some of them, which when we were looking at it, some of them don't have it in there at all, then they're actually just following the state.
Yeah.
That would be the,
Correct.
okay.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is, and that's like, for instance, White Cass County said in the manner provided by state law,
Right.
because that way if the state does change something, they're
They're
gonna
just
follow
gonna
the state
follow
law.
whatever
Yeah.
they, right.
Which I would guess that probably hasn't been changed since they adopted the ability to do home rule, would be my guess.
Okay.
I don't know that for certain, but that would be my guess. 'Cause I think that's pretty standard for, you know, publication.
So if we adopt this and are making these part of our home rule. If we were to change anything, you have to go in every time to review that. For any, I mean, if we aren't gonna follow the state, if you're making these changes, if you're gonna write this down specifically,
Oh, I get what you're saying. No, basically, if we write it down specifically, we're not following state law. That, the home rule is gonna take precedent.
right? So then if we wanted to make those, any change to it, we would have to make an amendment akin to it,
Of
correct?
course.
Yeah.
And the amendment would have to be prescribed in the manner previous, either
Outlined.
from the Board of Commissioners or from the public, and they'd have to collect signatures to make the amendment, and
Yeah.
if you wanted to go, say, 90 days or something
Right,
previous to the election,
right.
just for example, I don't know why you would, but just if you wanted to.
Mhm. Okay.
Well, I think it's pretty well spelled out there, in the way it is, right here, the way I see it.
See, no, this is, it reads differently here now, too.
You're reading something different than I'm reading.
See, I'm just reading how it reads here, at least 60 days after publication.
It sounds like it's a must, and that's why I keep going with that specific
Yeah, because
sentence.
I'm reading it too going, that doesn't make sense.
Here, I'll quick read it again. At least 60 days after publication, the proposed amendment or repeal must be submitted to a vote of the qualified electors of the county at the next primary or general election.
And that's straight out of state law. At least 60 days after publication, the proposed amendment or repeal must be submitted to a vote of the qualified electors of the county at the next primary or general election. I mean, it's exactly out of the statute.
Okay.
But it doesn't read very clearly, does it?
I read
So-
that as 60 days, there will be an election.
That's how I read it too.
Well,
That's how
it's
I
saying
interpret
essentially
it,
at
yes.
least 60 days after publication, so you get the petitions. The commission has 30 days to act on those petitions to then advertise, to publish the petition, the repeal.
Then you still got 60 days after.
Then, yeah,
After
so then
publication.
that publication date happens, initial publication date, then you have a 60-day running clock, and then the next primary or general after that then is when it happens, but that's a good, but I guess that still reads the same way, because once that publication occurs, you know the vote's gonna happen. But why the 60-day time frame in there? Just so there's time, I suppose, to have people can go out and make their case?
Well, I guess,
Probably.
I think that's my gist of it,
Yeah.
yes.
So there's time to at least have a good discussion about
Discussion.
why you wanna repeal it, I guess, I mean.
Change or-
So the 64 days really doesn't matter, 60 days is 60 days, because it's not talking about a
We're
drop
not,
dead date.
we're not talking about
Yeah.
that. 64 days is what it's gotta be
Yeah.
before, before the election, but this is,
Yeah,
we're dealing with a different,
This is publication in the
This-
paper for 60 days.
60
Yeah.
days after the publication.
yeah, so I mean, you're gonna have 90 days notice basically. Once you know that it's gonna happen, because the commission has to go along with the wishes of the people. They don't have a choice because it's spelled out that way. So once petitions show up, you know you're gonna have to put it on the ballot, and that's gonna be 90 days out at least before a general or a primary, so you know it's gonna be stuck on the ballot at that point.
Yeah.
I suppose, what are we actually publishing though? The ballot language on the repeal or the amendment?
Well, it would be the language which would be on their petition, what
Would
you
be the-
want to
Yeah.
have.
the language of the repeal, so to
Yes,
speak.
or the amendment. How
Yes.
they want it to read is what you would publish. Normally, I presume that's what's published.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying, if it's not specifically stipulated in the home rule, we could publish anything. You know what I mean?
That's a stretch that I don't think we can go that far, to publish anything.
No, I don't think
shall
so either.
I don't
Get a good enough lawyer, you can do whatever you want.
Oh, no.
Any, shall publish any
Is that the
proposed-
language right out of the statute?
I
Yeah.
don't,
I'd have to look just a second here.
If that's the language right out of the statute, I would stand by that.
No, I don't.
That's-
I don't know what that bubbles.
Yeah, my mom.
That's like saying you're gonna make that no
On my old-
smoking
my
sign
old
legal
crummy
for you to
computer.
smoke outside.
So we're talking, okay, within 30 days of receipt of a valid petition. yeah, second here, within 30 days of receipt of a valid petition or approval of a proposal to amend or repeal the Home Rule Charter, the governing body of the county shall publish any proposed amendment or repeal of a Home Rule Charter once in the official newspaper of the county. Yeah, so whatever the ballot, whatever the language they went out and collected
Correct.
signatures on has to be published verbatim.
Correct.
Yep.
Well, basically, if that's the case then, if we're basically saying that the 30 to 60 and everything else is fine, I think Cass County's language probably works the
In
best.
the manner prescribed.
In the manner prescribed by the
law.
state, and we want 15%.
Did you,
Yes.
yeah, so you're gonna change that, if I'm hearing right and following right, you're gonna change that first sentence to reflect the 15% or 300, whichever is greater, and then the rest can just be in the manner prescribed by state law.
Yeah, so, yeah, here's Cass County's. In the manner provided by state law, this charter may be amended or repealed by a proposal of the Board of County Commissioners or by petition bearing signatures of qualified voters of at least equal in number to 300 or 15% of the number of electors voting in the county for the office of governor in the last general election, whichever is greater.
Yes.
That's how it would read.
I'd like to amend that to keep the sentence that we do have in here. Let's see, any proposal to amend or repeal the Home Rule Charter may not be submitted to the electorate more than every 2 years.
No, I think that's reasonable.
I think that is
So you're not
reasonable
holding on
as
it all the
well.
time, if
Yeah.
somebody wants to repeal it, somebody gets a craw under their, we're under their saddle. Okay, I guess we can probably entertain a motion to do the whole thing at once if everybody's okay with what Anthony's thinking.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion to essentially use Cass County's language, put in 15% or 300, whichever is greater, and add in that it can only happen every 2 years, at a minimum every 2 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Seconded.
Motion and a second, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay,
And then we're going to keep the wording of any proposal, like he stated.
but yes, exactly, yep, that sentence there, just tack it on the end, basically, I guess would be how I would say it should be done. Okay. We're through Article 10.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Paul and I met this morning to kind of go over this, and I'm confused, or I'm not sure on the backstory, but in a different publication that we have, when they were going over the Home Rule Charter the last time, there's a financial procedures listed as an Article 10.
Yep.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I had noticed was missing in our article layout right now, and it's,
Yeah.
I was reading through Cass Counties to find that other stuff and ran across Article 9,
There are.
or 8 and 9 in Cass County, I think. Yep.
It's right here. See, ours ends at this amendments and repeal, and in the old one where they put notes, there's this whole financial procedures, fiscal year, budget.
Let's see.
And then Article 11.
And that would be
was the
similar
amendments.
to Article 8 probably coming out of like Cass County where they have a
Yeah.
financial procedure section.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
And
yeah,
then we don't have a revenue authority and limitations that we've done yet.
No, we don't, because we
Yeah.
do have that power in Article 2, but we haven't defined it yet.
Yes, and then Cass County, and I think a few of them have a financial procedures as well as a revenue authority limitation section, which I think would be prudent, I guess in my mind, to put both of those in. I guess we don't have a baseline to work from unless, which copy is that from then?
This is from. You mean the date of the old procedure?
Well, the one that has the additional, the procedures and everything in it. Does that one also have like a revenue authority and limitation section?
2004?
Oh.
Which one are you talking about now? You're talking about Cass County or you're talking?
No, I'm
about-
talking about the one that
Your
we have
old-
from Ramsey County that has that.
The old home rule? It's your 2004
What?
one.
what did you just ask?
Sure.
This one, this
Well,
2000.
going farther than 10, doesn't it?
I'm looking at one.
Okay,
that
yeah,
has-
I have that as well. I have a financial procedures section in the one I had before that.
The 2004.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it ends with an Article 11, the 2004
Yes.
one.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
and in the
Yeah,
10
I'm just looking to
has
see
the-
if that one also has that one does not have a revenue limitation section though. It just has a financial procedures section.
In the very front, under your table of contents for that one, it was, you have the table of contents. for
I don't
that?
know, I've got so many things.
I do on the, I
I got
think
the
the 2004 one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what is this one now? What do I got here? This is,
That's the one that we worked on.
yeah, that's the one we worked on. I'm just gonna throw that over. I got too many papers, you know. I don't know what I got.
don't you have this folder, Adam?
I do, but we all had, remember the first day, we all had different copies. So the copies in in our folders were different than the copies in yours for some reason. I don't know
Well,
why.
I think it was the order, if people changed the order of what we put it in that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how exactly it happened, but the copies
Yeah.
were different, basically.
Because I just took from one book and I copied and I.
Okay, this must be
placed
the
it as
beginning of
a-
this then. One,
Okay.
no, this is different. So this one has got the table of contents, but it doesn't have
Is
that.
that this one?
Yeah, I don't have that one. I never did have that one, I don't believe.
This is,
But
no,
if
this is
you
the
have-
one we're working on right now.
This part of it?
They're,
Yeah,
well,
that's
they're,
what I say.
yeah, well, the one they're looking at is the 2004 old. This one, right, it's the one with that has the financial.
Okay, I got an Article 10 financial.
See what it shows under the 10?
If it
It
helps in the
shows
binder,
financial.
There we go.
Yep.
it was right after the Tuesday, April 20th.
I had to reorder mine.
Oh, that one, okay.
You're fine.
There. That's, follows this.
Yes, it's, for some reason I'm missing the front pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just missing all the front pages. I have the,
You want to make a copy?
oh, that's fine, I got it all here, I believe. Yeah, I've got all of it here. I've got 9, 10, 11.
Yep.
I'm just gonna throw all this crap out. Otherwise I'm gonna keep looking at it. I'm not gonna go
Well, after 10, I don't have anything.
Yeah,
That's-
so you have the different copy too.
No, yeah, that's a different copy.
For ease of operation, let me just look at like ours versus
Oh,
like
let's-
Cass County and see if it's the same, cause maybe we can work off of that
Yeah.
instead.
Okay, I'll look at
Just let me take a look at it here.
Well, I got all
You
my,
got one?
I got it all put.
Okay, financial procedures.
mine is, this is an article.
Okay, there we go. Okay, fiscal year,
This in your binder?
Well,
submission of
I'll do
budget.
this way.
no, here we
We
go.
got a 3-year capital program versus a 5-year
I
capital.
punched all those holes and
Our budgeting,
kept it
that
all.
looks to be word for
I
word.
got everything that I've had here.
Board of County Commissioners action.
Is it in this one?
Okay, there it is, but is that it? Yeah.
That looks to be word for word.
No, that's not it.
Revenue certification looks
It was
to
behind
be
this.
word for word. Amendments by adoption.
Oh, you're going,
Yeah, we're looking to the
Looks to
old
be
one.
word
Back
for
here.
word. Lapse of appropriation.
This far in.
there's April 2nd, and this way.
Yep.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Oh, here we go. Every.
So where I hits for 2004.
Okay, so ours, the one that we have that's different, or that we have here with the financial procedures is word for word of what I can tell for Cass counties, other than one change under the submission of budget section. Of what I can tell.
Bingo. There's the one we're looking at.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
In Cass counties, they call for a 5-year capital program. In the draft copy from Ramsey County, it calls for a 3-year.
Yes,
Well, I guess
it
I
does
didn't look
difference,
at that.
5 years.
Yeah, other than that, it's word for word the same as Cass County.
Exactly.
Blue
That's
light.
what we know.
Yes.
Yeah,
Literally and figuratively.
I mean,
I
I
guess
guess-
we're just wondering why there wasn't one with the current one we were looking at.
my guess is that, you know, I don't have a problem with laying out financial procedures from the county aspect, but pretty much all of our financial procedures are laid out in state law. And if we lay out financial procedures specifically saying this is the deadline to have a budget and everything like that in the home rule, the state can move those budget deadlines up or back on us. like next year, our budget has to be in earlier than previously, right?
Well,
Yeah, this year, by a month.
No, I guess it wasn't that we felt there was we just were wondering why it was in the one and taken out and not put in. But that answers the question.
But
Yeah,
that-
I think they
That
just-
could have been one version that was written.
Yeah.
And then something could have changed to,
Right?
My guess is that, like, my inclination would be, they said, the state tells us when we have to do our budget, and our fiscal year is obviously this,
Yeah.
and so we don't need all the extra verbiage,
Okay.
Why,
would be my guess.
Okay.
Which is, because we did notice that Walsh, Burley, and Steele did not
They
have,
don't have it.
they don't have
Yeah.
financials under theirs.
This-
well, if you're gonna make it proceed, I mean, I had it over state law,
yeah. See-
we better just stick with what state law is and
Yeah.
we
But
don't
see,
wanna
like, one
supersede,
motion
supersede
in
anything
the
like that.
minutes, you know, like I'm going kind of back in the minutes and it just says, the committee reviewed article, it just says reviewed each article in the Home Rule Charter draft for Ramsey County. Several changes were made to incorporate sections or other county home rule charters that seemed beneficial. The commission members noted these changes were still in a draft form and would be subject to future review and possible change. But it doesn't
Right.
Oh, okay.
spell out
Each one,
each one,
yeah, I see.
Oh, okay.
you know?
Yep.
Like we've gone, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, you know? I
Yep.
mean, where this one, they just, you know,
Okay.
I mean, I'm kind of thinking that, you know, but
Yeah.
there's
Well, and that makes sense.
how many versions of it though?
Right.
So,
Yeah. That makes sense. When we were reviewing it, we just noticed that was now currently missing and we weren't sure
Yeah,
why. But if we're following then the state laws and the state procedures,
yeah.
then that's,
And the only thing I would say is, in this financial procedures section, the state doesn't lay out anything for the idea of like a capital plan,
Yeah,
which I think, at
We
least in
should.
my mind, is kind of a prudent thing to have. I mean, we already do a 5-year road plan and stuff like that, but a 5-year capital plan probably would be, or even if you wanted to do 3, would probably be reasonable for most departments. We don't have huge expenses, but, you know, if we knew 2 years down the road, we're gonna have to buy a new software package or something like that, that might help in the budgeting procedures. And we kinda already do that verbally, you know, they kind of, you know, one of our department heads will come in and be like, well, a couple years down the road, we're probably gonna have to do this type of thing. But it wouldn't be bad to have it on paper with some type of plan. And the other thing I would say is, I'm guessing in state law, it's not prescribed that section 6, amendments after adoption.
Yep.
Because essentially that's stating we can move money around as need be under emergency clause and things like that, and we don't have that power right now. I mean, to a point we have to amend, but we can't declare an emergency clause and then pull money out of some area and put it someplace else.
it is where it is.
I thought the county did have a strategic plan.
We have a comprehensive plan,
Okay.
but that's land use and things around the county.
Okay.
And long-term planning in terms of population growth and things like that. Now, strategic plan in terms of departments, when it comes to buying vehicles, things like that, we don't have any capital plans
Probably in
for any
a
department.
county meeting where you guys were discussing that, or has it been discussed and then didn't move forward, or?
Like a strategic plan?
Right,
I guess I don't recall ever discussing one since I've been here.
you recall, Ken, or was that just me?
We're going right now through the comprehensive plan as well as planning and zoning.
I'm probably just confused.
Yeah, but that's just a little bit different.
several different levels of planning.
Yeah, but we don't, you know, like for instance, if the sheriff's department would be one of them, because they're obviously heavy in vehicles. You know, the sheriff will come in and give us a verbal, next year we're thinking we're gonna have to replace this car or whatever, but there's no written plan on, you know, replacement of
Long-term,
officers
like 5
or,
years.
yeah, or where you know we're gonna do this, and I mean, just for a heads up, I mean, is it necessary? Probably not, but would it be nice just to be there so we at least have a plan?
Would it be possible to put in more or less a stipulation that anything over, say, $100,000 has to have a lifetime replacement plan. So if you have something that's super expensive, then you should be planning to replace that at the end of its design life.
Good. We don't run into things that are over 100,000 too much.
Okay.
I mean,
I was thinking more buildings and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, you know, for instance, I mean, some of the big stuff would be, and like I said, that the department heads give us a heads up, but like Roger told me the other day, we might have to replace the gym floor in the memorial building in a few years.
Yeah.
Well, if we had that planned out, so 5 years, we're gonna have to do the floor, and then we're gonna have to do this, then maybe we could budget, especially since if this passes, we're gonna have financial flexibility to kind of do some different things. Maybe you could go, hey, we're gonna budget maybe a little more in 2019, so we can build up a reserve, so we don't have to wham people with taxes in 2020 to be able to do that floor, and then just carry it over or whatever. And you could do that anyway, but if you have the plan, and you know.
That way you have the plan ahead of time.
Yeah.
You know it's coming, and you can tell people, hey, we're saving up for
Yeah.
when this happens, and that way you don't have to be hit later on.
I mean, the big stuff, we have plans, you know, like the 5-year road plan we have the gravel plan, you know, we have bridge plans, so we kind of have an idea of replacement, give or take, you know, stuff comes up obviously.
Yeah.
But at least we have an idea of when things were done, when they should be done again, and what it will cost, hopefully, you know, you can only go out so many years. But like the big stuff here, like the memorial building and the courthouse are obviously upkeep and maintenance are probably the bigger ones, plus vehicles.
Yep.
You know, most of the other stuff isn't too, you know, we built a shop in Edmore, we knew that was coming. But, you know, we've got some other shops and stuff around the county that aren't exactly new. So we might have to do some replacement there, you know. I don't want it to become tedious where it's a tough thing for the department heads either, you know.
No.
Kevin has it pretty good.
Overall,
I mean, yeah.
I mean, I think we could have a little bit better plan when it comes to, you know, like maybe taking one bridge out every year that can be replaced with culverts or something just to stay ahead of it, but we kind of do them as need be. Which is okay too, because, but you know, if you get that year when you have to do 3 of them or something, it could really.
The past 15 years on us haven't been very nice for that, so.
Yeah.
Past 3 years have been.
But I mean, Ramsey County's not so bad that way. If we were like in Walsh County, then you'd really have to be like, we need a bridge plan, because they've got 500 bridges.
So then, so basically, are we done with 10 then? Or do we-
I don't know, I mean, I don't know if we're
Did
necessarily
we make a
done.
motion on that?
I would.
I thought we were done with 10 and
Susie did
discussing
it.
a potential 11.
What's that?
Well, it could be a potential 11, it could go into potentially, we could slide it into the document as a 8 or 9 or whatever. But we're just discussing the financial procedures
Okay.
possibility.
Right,
What are your guys'
so
inclinations, I
since
guess?
you had mentioned the fact that you follow the state law on that financial piece, I don't know that we really need to implement it. Correct?
Right, but I do like the points about, I'm writing notes on page, I no longer have it. I do like the points about, you know, the 3-year plan or a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
At least the idea of it, as well as some discussion about amendments, you know, that's not where I'm at. There was another portion of that. Here, amendments after adoption section, I think you had talked about the ability to, or flexibility to move some stuff around.
Let's go through it section by section and just go
Section
through
6, I thought you had touched on.
Yeah, well, that's reasonable, we can go section by section.
Yeah,
Okay, so, are we all on the same one? We're all looking at the Ramsey County one, correct?
correct.
Okay, just making sure. So section 1 would be
Our
fiscal,
new one or our old one?
The old one.
the old one, the one with the fiscal procedures,
Okay.
section 10.
Good.
Okay. So section 1 would say fiscal year. The fiscal year of the county will begin on the first day of January and end the last day of December. That's pretty self-explanatory, I would think.
I move to strike.
Okay, we have a motion to strike. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor,
Maybe
vote by
without
saying
replacement.
aye.
Aye.
Okay. think that passes. So we've struck section 1. Okay, number 2, submission of budget. On or before a date established by the Board of County Commissioners, each department, office, or agency, whether headed by an elected official or appointed officer, will submit to the Board of County Commissioners a budget for the ensuing fiscal year, including a 3-year capital program.
I move to adopt as read.
I'll second that,
Okay, as read?
as
Okay,
read.
with 3-year. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt section 2 as read. Further discussion?
So we're approving the verbiage.
Verbatim. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
I lost my place.
Opposed, same sign. Lack of voting with the quorum still means it passes. Susie looks confused.
I am confused.
What?
So does that mean we're going to adopt another Article 11 and we're gonna do financial procedures and now we'll have a section 1 submission of, or this on and before? Like, I got lost somewhere.
Basically, what we're gonna do is yes, this will be a full a new article entitled Financial Procedures.
Okay.
And then we're just gonna go through it here. So now what we just adopted as submission of budget will be section 1.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
section 1 was struck. And it'll just be renumbered accordingly depending on what we keep and what we delete. Would be my
Yeah.
impression, Okay, section 3, budget. The Board of County Commissioners will prepare a budget which provides in fiscal terms and in terms programs and outline, that doesn't read very well, of the proposed financial policies of the county for ensuing fiscal year. The budget will provide a complete financial plan of all county funds and activities for the ensuing fiscal year and include a countywide 3-year capital program, and except as required by law or this charter, will be in a form as the Board of County Commissioners may require. Doesn't that just basically say what the one above it said?
Yeah.
Adding the, same thing, adding the countywide 3-year.
Yes. It is a little more detailed on what the budget is actually encompassing itself, but beyond that, that whole first paragraph escapes me.
I don't understand the will be in a form as the Board of County Commissioners may require. What the heck does that mean? Digital? Print?
Ticker tape.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Microfilm or microfiche, or we just, it's, I don't quite understand what they
I just
mean.
need to strike that.
Okay? As a whole?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to strike section 3 budget as a whole. Do we have a second?
Me.
We have a second. Further discussion?
Is there value in taking that first sentence of the second paragraph and importing it into section 2? The budget will provide a complete financial plan for all county funds and activities for the ensuing fiscal year. Or is that already covered sufficiently? Yeah, it is.
I would say it is.
It says that right there.
In
the
section-
We'll
ensuing
submit a
fiscal
budget
year.
for the ensuing fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much I think it's implied that a budget is gonna be all encompassing. You're not gonna bring in half a budget, I guess.
Sounds good.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of striking the language, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Language is stricken. Okay, section 4. Board of County Commissioners action on budget. The Board of County Commissioners will publish in the official newspaper of the county the general summary of the budget and a notice stating, number 1, the times and places where copies of the budget are available for inspection by the public, and number 2, time and place not less than 2 weeks after publication for a public hearing on the budget. After the public hearing, the Board of County Commissioners may adopt the budget with or without amendments. No amendment may increase or decrease expenditures required by law, or for debt service, or for an estimated cash deficit. No amendment to the budget may increase the authorized expenditures to an amount greater than total estimated resources. The Board of County Commissioners will adopt the budget on or before the first day of October of the current fiscal year.
That's all.
That's just policy, ain't it? Leave it as it is.
Public hearing, may adopt the budget with or without amendments. No
Because what-
amendment may
because whatever you
increase or decrease
publish-
expenditures required by law.
Make sure I said it right. Whatever preliminary figures you publish,
You can't go up.
you can't go up.
Yeah.
You can only go down,
I don't think that's what this is stating though.
and it has to be by October 1st.
Well, now it's gotta be by September 1st. That's why we're a month up, right?
Gotta be before that.
Yeah. That's the problem with stating an outright date in here, because if the state decides to
Change.
screw things up, then
You're right.
the charter doesn't read what the state wants you to do.
Well,
I'm
you
just-
pretty much have to go by state rules there then, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that second, I don't know if it'd be the second paragraph, the one where it says, no amendment may increase or decrease expenditures required by law or for debt service or for an estimated cash deficit. I'm trying to figure where that would be applicable. Because that's not saying, that's saying essentially that if we're required from like the state or feds to spend a certain amount on something, or we have a debt to service from previous years, or an estimated cash deficit, we don't have a choice. We have to have it at that number. So we can't go, well, we don't feel like paying for that this year,
Yep.
so we're not gonna pay for it.
But that's just the amendment.
Yes,
So you could set that up previously and say, we're not gonna pay that this year.
yes,
You just can't amend it after the fact.
which is really, I'm just saying, it's kind of an odd stipulation.
Is that even necessary?
That's a good question. Yeah, no amendment to the budget may increase the authorized expenditures to an amount greater than total estimated resources. Well, and again, I don't quite understand what that means. What does total estimated resources mean? Whatever our cap is on the mill levies? Plus, if we assume we're gonna, say we have a sales tax someday, we can't go above those numbers then?
Nope.
Is what it's basically saying. I don't think we're at
So
any risk
whatever
of,
you,
I don't think we're at any risk of doing that.
I think all that'd be scary though for the voting public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think it would be scary to be there or to not be there? What,
Well, I think
I do
the
for you.
verbiage of that is a little scary for the voting public.
Well, it's confusing, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
It's confusing and is not sure what that actually,
right, like if you're saying, Adam, what does that actually mean? Then the voting public would be also saying,
what does
oh,
that mean?
yeah.
No, the voting public's probably smarter than me, so they could probably figure it
No,
out.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just kind of an interesting, it's an interesting clause, basically. And the first two stipulations, basically, that's law anyway, right?
Well, we've already had that, I mean, put that in the public hearing and that's already in the one before, didn't we decide that?
Well, no, we
No.
just said they have to submit a budget with a capital program. The public hearing and everything, that's all state statute, you have to have a public hearing on your budget. And that's, obviously should be there. And when we publish, does it say where you can get a copy of the budget and all that stuff? Is that all part of the publication?
either way, it's a good idea to have it in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be implied too, that if it's the county budget, you come to the county courthouse
Right,
and talk to
maybe
the auditor.
implied.
But some people don't know that the auditor's the one that's kinda running the show on
So
it,
I don't see a
That's-
problem with putting that in there.
you know?
I think it's good.
Yeah, I think that's.
Or, you could go look at the PDF on the county website or
Yeah.
something like that. Just basically stating where you can find the budget to take a look at it. I don't have a problem with that either. I'm not a big fan of it. The
I'm a
more
big
information you
fan
can
of-
give people for the sunshine of the day is a good thing.
Of how they can access it.
Yeah, I mean, you wanna do everything open and honest at all times.
Is there an easier way to word that last couple sentences, basically saying that we can't go over and above the budget total that was published, but we can move stuff around inside it?
Yeah, that's nice.
Because that's more or less what I'm thinking the purpose of this is so that, hey, after we publish, we realize that we have underfunded something, we can reshuffle that budget internally without going over that total.
It's a good question.
Okay, so notice of county budget. Okay, which it was repealed and then it's effective for January 1st of 18. The estimates of necessary expenditures and the tax levies required therefore as shown by the auditor's budget statement, together with a notice that the Board of County Commissioners will meet on a specified date for the purpose of making tax levies as set forth in the estimates, naming the time and place of holding such meeting, shall be published in at least one issue of the official newspaper of the county. The county auditor shall notify by mail the township and city officers in regard to the date of such meeting.
Do we do that?
Yes, it's on the very back page of the.
Well, I didn't know, I knew the publication, but I didn't know we had to spend a specific letter to the township officers, I wasn't aware of that. I've never been a township officer.
You should
I
see
actually
all this
just-
stuff Candy's.
I know she
Send it
does all
to-
that. That's why our mail bill is so high.
What, Bill?
That's why our stamps and paper bill is so high, because we're sending out stuff to everybody all the time. What did they say, not to digress, but they said at Terry Trainer, they're doing a study on how many things we have to publish in the newspaper. 272 different things are in state statute that have to be published in the paper when they happen for legal notice, which is an insane amount of things, and most of them are just things that never happen, but his example was, if you wanna move a cemetery, it has to be published 8 times.
What?
Yeah. But it's in state statute that way, it's really interesting. I mean,
See where
if
they're
you're me,
coming
I guess.
from.
but-
Wow.
That's a pretty permanent thing, we're moving a cemetery, you wanna, maybe go.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's, I can't remember what the number was statewide, something like $3 million or something is spent on just publications,
Just in publishing,
just by counties.
just like to publish everything, it's.
Yeah. So, it's kinda interesting, anyway. So,
Each time?
Pretty close.
no, well, there's $3 million total.
No, like to publish everything, it's in the paper each time.
Yeah, we have to publish our full minutes.
Oh, no, I know that.
It's like, it's almost $1,000.
Yeah, pretty close.
Oh, my goodness.
When you don't do the bills, it's like, I just got
And I
720 some dollars. And that's one time.
Oh,
so, anyway,
Okay.
so,
So then, in other words, then the shorter we make this home rule charter,
we're gonna save some money. Rodney, that's
publish it, I mean, we've got, there's, seriously, they've appropriated $5,000, but the amount of time it's got to be published, it might be ate up.
Maybe we could pull the font down real small.
Yeah.
In that spirit, I move that we strike the last sentence of section 4. The Board of County Commissioners will adopt the budget on or before last day of October, and just get rid of it entirely.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I'll second
That's just
that.
above section 5.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion and a second to strike that last sentence in section 4. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Who did the second?
Motion
I
carries.
did.
I further move that on the end of the sentence, no amendment to the budget may increase the authorized expenditures to an amount greater than total estimated resources. Amend that to read estimated resources as published in the previous budget. So, not previous, basically, so you're saying specifically in the budget published.
As published in the proposed budget.
Correct. Thank you.
No amendment to the budget may increase the authorized expenditures.
Or amount greater than estimated total, comma, as published in the proposed budget.
Yep.
Okay, it's reasonable. Is that a motion?
That was.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a second to add that language, I'm not gonna say. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Okay, back to the section 4 as a whole. I think it's kind of interesting, those two stipulations that are in here aren't things that are required by law. That we say,
I like
well, you
them
can
though.
see it and when you can see it, and that it has to be at least 2 weeks previous to the hearing. Which, interesting, I guess I kind of like both of them, but. That gets, because
Because technically it is.
technically,
It is public information.
yes, and technically, if you're gonna do the budget, then say the first Tuesday of the month, you would have that, have your meeting, then you would make that motion to publish it, then you couldn't hold the hearing though until the next month. Because you'd have to have 2 weeks previous, and it can't possibly get in the paper till Wednesday.
Right.
So, and we usually like to do, when do we do our hearing, 8 AM or 5:30?
The final one?
Yeah,
No, we do it the first meeting in October.
okay, so it's the first meeting, so it is the 8 AM meeting.
Yeah, but
So you'd have that-
we give a specific time though.
Yeah.
As to when.
Yeah, like 9
Yeah.
AM
Yeah.
and whatever,
Yeah.
yeah. But we usually have 2 weeks notice or a month notice that we're publishing? That's my question, because if you say 2 weeks after publication, then that gives you, that you're almost gonna have to be prepared a month ahead with
Guarantees
everything.
you a month.
Because you might not have that full 2 weeks between, the Wednesday morning, it's gonna get in, and it might not even get in on Wednesday because they go to publication, you have to have it right after the meeting to go to publication for Wednesday.
And they've changed their time again, so.
I mean, I'm not saying this is unreasonable, I'm just saying for workability's sake.
Seems like it should work fine if we moved it to 1 week. The budget is not that complex to read through.
Okay? Well, you could say 10 days or something too. You just
I
want to
don't
be
see
fine.
why we can't just leave it at 2 weeks.
Good.
We're dealing with the public.
Good point. Give them time to schedule.
Give them time to do what they want to do.
Check it out.
You don't wanna take, my thought on this is, we don't wanna take anything away from the voting public on this charter.
Okay.
And that would be one thing that you're doing, and when you delete, make it 1 week.
Very good point.
Okay.
That's reasonable. We'll just have to make sure whoever's here has their ducks in a row, make sure it's a month ahead of time, that's all.
Yep.
I think that's fair. Okay. Further discussion on the whole of section 4. What's left?
But can I add that may change as the newspaper changes? You know, like publication, like how often, if they ever change, you know, where it goes from
If they ever went to
every
a-
day
Yeah, went to,
to.
Yeah.
yeah, and we publish 5 days a week right now, correct? Just Monday through Friday. I don't think we're in danger of going to a weekly, but you never know.
To me, that paper's kinda shaky.
You know,
Maybe we need to keep
Just
publishing,
keep
we need to
your-
keep publishing our minutes then,
yeah,
because we don't wanna lose our newspaper,
right.
you know, we still need.
Well, it's our county newspaper, and like I said, that's the only reason I buy them, get subscribed to the paper, so that I can read the county proceedings.
Yeah,
And it'll be on the ballot too.
and there's every, and certain counties only have a weekly,
Right.
you know,
Right.
like Towner County, they have to publish and they've only got a weekly. You can't-
Well,
Yeah.
when we had 2 papers in town, that when the Devil's Lake World, that was the official paper, and that was only once a week for a long time.
There was two.
Yeah, we had 2 papers
Huh?
at one point.
I'm going back a long time.
What's that? I mean, I remember like the Edinburgh, I think we,
Yep, there was,
More
a-
Herald.
does that still?
Yeah, it's a weekly.
But it's more-
I think it's a weekly.
but that was also on the ballot at
Yeah,
one time
it
to
is.
put the
It's on
Edmore
your
paper as
own.
the official
The Edmore
paper, so.
Herald.
Oh, Devil's Lake,
Huh?
It's published in Dakota.
Edmore?
It could be.
Edmore paper.
There's a bunch of these little
They want
papers
it
out in
there.
the neck of the woods that are owned by the same.
They voted on that to
Yeah,
be
Benson
the
County
official
uses a
paper of
weekly.
the county.
And in all honesty, if that ever became a problem, I suppose we would have to amend it, maybe if it gets.
And I think-
Papers aren't anymore.
I think Lakota paper, I think that's the official paper of Nelson County.
That's a
Yeah.
weekly.
That's
Benson County Press is a weekly.
Yeah.
That's
Benson
a-
County,
that's
so
the
it's,
official
I mean, you gotta kinda figure some of these time things
paper. Yeah, it's a good point.
in there.
So if it is a weekly paper, would 2 weeks shoot ourselves in the foot then?
I don't think so. You just have to make sure that you're a month ahead, just like we probably would have to be in this
Or
situation.
should we still fit within that?
Right.
month?
Because it's every,
Especially
like the
so-
deadline for the town or county paper, I think is what? I think it's Thursday or Friday.
Yeah,
I think it's Thursday afternoon to get it, because they print Friday to go out Saturday. So it would be the same thing if we had a Tuesday meeting and it was only a weekly
The
paper.
2 weeks gives
Okay.
them time to.
I think it's reasonable, yeah.
yeah, okay.
Or you have to have a special meeting.
But I'm just saying, there's a, I mean, not in Ramsey County, but there's a possibility in some of these other counties that if they lose their weekly, where are they even gonna publish notices and minutes and things like that?
If you have a weekly paper, what's the day you get your paper?
Saturday usually.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Town or counties goes out on a Saturday, I believe,
Yeah.
because I've had to advertise
Or I
it.
suppose whatever day they decide to choose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends on whatever day, I don't know what day
I
the
was trying to
Edmore
think
goes out.
what day the Edmore
That's-
one
I mean-
shows up in the store.
Yeah.
Down south
I
there.
don't think.
Yeah,
That's
Benson County Herald Record or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
Or no, Farmers Press.
Farmers
Farmers
Press.
Press.
and New Rockford, that's what I was coming
No,
from.
New Rockford. Oh, New Rockford has a paper. Well, I suppose, yeah, they have to, because that's any county's official paper, I suppose. That's a weekly hours.
Any county, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so, okay,
I mean, some of those time things are considered in that because we do have a lot of
Variation and how.
other papers.
yeah. And in all honesty, we don't know what's gonna happen with their business model going forward either, so I mean, it's reasonable to make sure that we give ourselves enough time so people know. Okay? Okay,
5.
I don't even know what we're doing.
We're doing 5, section.
We never passed section 4.
Yeah, we did.
Did we?
Yeah, we made a vote. I think, did we do that?
No,
no.
Cindy?
Well, we did.
You just made the motion.
We did part of
We did
4
parts.
to,
Strike
We're in the
and
process of
We
relooking at
struck the last,
four.
we struck the last sentence, we
The last
added a little bit
sentence,
to the end
yes.
of that last
and then
paragraph.
Anthony and Rodney did to add the verbiage to the sentence.
The sentence, and that was the end of it.
Yep.
Yep, so if you wanna take it as a whole, that's fine.
I'll take it as a whole.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt section 4 as a whole. Do we have
I'll
a second?
second.
We have a second, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries and section 4 is adopted. Okay. Section 5, revenue certification. To implement the adopted budget, the Board of County Commissioners will file a tax levy certification authorizing the tax levy or levies and setting the tax rate or rates not later than the 10th day of October of each year. What does that line up with what we do now?
Do what now?
When do you have to have the tax levy certification filed? That's an auditor's question.
Tax
Exactly.
or levy setting this tax.
I think that's the same verbiage that Cass and everybody else used.
So do you have to like file a certification for the levies right after we approve the budget? How does that work? I've never gotten into the nitty gritty of that. We just approve the budget and I figure you're gonna figure out how to get everything.
All I know is it's the same dates on all of the other ones that you use.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I don't
kind of
know what
standard
that's-
deal from the way I gathered it.
Yeah, it must be something, I don't know what it
It's the
is.
same at the city level too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I move that we adopt that recertification. I
Let
mean,
me
yeah,
see.
number 5.
Okay, we have a motion.
But, okay.
Just a second, we can discuss it after the motion. We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, further discussion. My only question would be is since they moved up the date at the state level by a month, does that affect this, so we have to have it done by like the 10th of September instead of October? That's my
My
only question.
question as well is, is this something that the state is gonna dictate a date? If so, we should just reference the state on that. If not, then let's keep it to ourselves.
So what does this revenue certification mean from the
So-
standpoint of the auditor's office?
It's 404006. Where is that? That is when. But my notes say that levy certificates are due from cities, park districts by October 10th. So I don't know what,
Oh, later than
But that's gonna change under the new statute, right? That's not gonna change? So we have to have our budget done 6 weeks or 5 weeks previous?
that's just to do the estimated tax statement.
Oh,
that
so the
goes
end
out.
date is still the end?
That's just to do that estimated
Oh,
tax
so they can do
statement
that
that has to go out
October
in,
first is the day
August.
that you gotta have your,
like, I think all
Yeah.
of our,
But they pushed up the date though to do the proposed budget by a month because they're sending out those things now. That's right, that's what's happening. Okay. Yeah, you gotta send out the, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
the notice
there
of,
goes my paper budget.
yeah, the notice of whatever, we have to send out letters to everybody.
It's a proposed
Oh,
tax statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's gonna, I mean, I'm not gonna try to get political,
so that,
but I
the
think it's gonna
10th
get
stays
you
as
anyway.
is.
Huh?
So the 10th stays as is.
Well, that would be the date that we have to have things back from everybody else. So does that give you time hypothetically to get ours done?
Taxing districts to January, October 10th. So, okay.
Because theirs is, you don't have to add theirs in, it's just you have to have them by the 10th and you have to have yours done by the 10th. Okay.
Well, but I know that they submit them sooner than that, but I think October 10th is if they want to make any changes to that before I move forward. Did I say that right?
yeah.
I said that right.
Yeah, I think so.
Because they had a deadline prior to that, but October 10th is like cut off.
No later than.
So if, like, the fire district
Yeah.
wanted to change their budget or.
Well, yeah, they could amend their
Yeah.
budget down from their previous
Yeah.
adopted or their previous published budget too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that would be the October 10th.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So basically, they have to send you a proposed budget, so we can send out the proposed taxation thing that we're gonna have to do now. And then they have to adopt their budget then in that same time frame, and then give you the final then, so we can certify everything by the 10th. And we have to do the same thing at the county level. So that seems to make sense, then we can keep it the same way. Seems fine. Okay. Further
It's
discussion?
It's just actually bumping their previous budgets by a month. Just so that we can do the estimated tax
Yeah,
statement.
the proposed budget is the only thing that's being affected then. So that's why we're moved up a month, because we have to have the proposed budget out a month earlier so we can send out the proposed tax statements and give everybody enough time to understand what's going on,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And more than likely field probably,
5,000 phone calls.
yeah, to field probably like 1,000 questions about why are we sending out tax documents in the middle of summer?
Yeah.
When they usually come in December.
And twice a day.
Yeah, people are gonna get a little confused, I think, but they'll figure it out.
Well, we have done like we're gonna put a watermark.
Yeah.
over it.
Don't pay. Proposed.
This is not a bill.
Oh, right, right.
People will send us in checks though,
Mhm,
Mhm.
mhm.
and then we'll have to send them checks back.
No,
It'll be confusing, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so we have a motion on the floor to adopt as is, correct?
Correct.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries and it is adopted. Okay. Section 6. Amendments after adoption. Number 1, the Board of County Commissioners may adopt supplemental or emergency appropriations or may provide for reductions or transfers pursuant to the procedures provided in Section 4, which I don't know what our Section 4 states. Might have to change that number.
That
So
would be
section 4 was that
four
no
was
amendment
the
may
budget.
increase or decrease.
Right.
Section 4 was
Section 4.
Board of County Commissioners action on budget. So it is still our Section 4 then. Okay,
Yep.
very good. Oh, I'm sorry, Section 4.
Yeah.
I was thinking
I know, I
Article
looked at
4.
Article 4 too,
Okay,
I was
my
like,
fault, I'm sorry. Okay, reductions or transfers pursuant to the procedures provided in section 4. To the extent that there are no available unappropriated revenues or if a sufficient fund balance to meet emergency appropriations, the Board of County Commissioners may authorize the issuance of emergency notes, which may be renewed from time to time, but the emergency notes and renewals of any fiscal year must be paid not later than the last day of the fiscal year next succeeding that in which the emergency appropriation was made. Let's deal with that first. How about that? Or do you want to do number 2 at the same time? Is that okay?
Let's do number 1 first.
Okay, there's kind of a lot there to unpack, so I figured we might as well handle them one by one.
What do they mean by when they say which may be renewed from time to time? Because you're basically selling bonds here, right?
That would be my,
Understanding of it.
yeah.
Okay.
My guess it would be, for instance, and I hate to use this as an example, but like what happened down in Morton County, where they had to come up with money quickly because they had to, they had to deputize, bring in a bunch of people and pay for
Yeah.
stuff. So I don't know, if they had to float it for a while. I don't know how they did it. But then the state paid them back somehow, but they had to pay, essentially for the law enforcement costs in the interim. Like I said, that would be kind of a situation where maybe an emergency would happen, or maybe, for instance, maybe an easier one would be if, say, God forbid, we had a bridge collapse or something like that, and we didn't have it in the budget, and we didn't have the funds available in a fund balance, but the bridge needed to be replaced,
Yep.
like a Belgard or something like that. Then you go, then you could go out and issue bonds immediately, and then to get the thing done, hypothetically, would be an example, I think.
Can I make a recommendation here?
Yeah, what?
That we replace it, or not replace it, we basically amend it so that you cannot pay bonds with new bonds. Gets rid of that renewing, and then we move it to that 3-year time span to match our capital plan.
Okay.
You can take a bond out in an emergency situation for a 3-year term, and if at the end of that 3-year term you haven't figured out how to pay for it, then you're in real trouble. But
Yeah.
that way we don't get into a scenario where we start paying back bonds with new bonds.
Okay. The only situation I would see where there's a problem where if it was a big expense, and it was something that if it was on your normal capital plan, you would be bonding for anyway. If you
Yep.
take away the ability to bond,
And this would be for emergency bonds only.
I know, but what I'm saying is, say it's like a $2 million bridge project, and you were planning on bonding it anyway, and it falls down, so then you have to issue the emergency bonds, then you take away the ability to rebond those emergency bonds, and then you're gonna have to pay for it straight out of property taxes on the budget within the next 3 years. So you're gonna have to take on $700,000 of additional property tax liability every single year, instead of stretching it out over, I don't even know what a 20 or 10-year bond, something like
Yeah.
that, where you could keep the costs reasonable
Okay.
to a county taxpayer. But I get what you're saying. Basically, you just want to make sure that we're not like just keep extending the
Yeah,
the
so
can
we don't
down
say,
the
hey,
road.
we've got, this $1 million bond and we're just gonna keep reselling it, the same thing every year.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from, because that's a reasonable thing to say. We don't want to just keep kicking the can down the road.
Is there an easy way to then write that in here?
Don't kick the can down the road. That's a good question.
Cause that's gonna be the immediate comeback is, hey, if we give the board this power, then what's the limitation on that?
So you somehow need to put a limitation in the renewed section.
Yeah.
Language of the renewed section.
Well,
Yes?
our bonding authority is structured under state statute, though.
Okay.
Certain it is somewhere.
So, I mean, I would guess that obviously, again, implied consent on this goes back to whatever the state statute is on how we can bond.
Okay.
Again, that's my inclination, I don't know if that's certain, but that would be my guess. Because, we can only bond in certain situations right now.
Of course.
Renewed in accordance with state law. Does that make you feel better?
That does, what is state law on it though?
I don't
That's
know.
what I'm trying to look up here, but my computer is old
Okay.
and I'm missing keys. My children ripped a couple keys off. And my Z key doesn't work anymore because it's stuck. Luckily I don't have to use Zebra. So if I run into a word that needs a Z, I'm just like, what's another word I can use that means the same thing?
What are you doing to rate out pizza?
Right.
That's a good question. You could use calzone, but that's got a Z too.
Yes.
PISSA or
Pie,
whatever it is.
pizza
And-
pie.
And then let autocorrect take care of it.
It turns into a problem. Okay, I'm going to look at, oh shoot, I should be in counties because that's gonna give, or is that under bonding authority? I can't remember where it would be at, state statute.
One of those two options. Are you in chapter 11?
I'm in
or are
chapter
you in-
11 right
okay.
now. County debt adjustments.
Smaller.
Port authorities? Nice. Yeah, I don't think I see anything here that would qualify. Let's see here. For sales and exchange.
We could just put it in there basically the saying that you cannot renew the emergency bond nor use emergency bonds to pay for or to reimburse previous bonds.
Here we go.
So that way we can still do your example.
Okay, I found bonds here. It's chapter 21, I don't know if it's the right one, but. Yeah, so it's got definitions, election required, purposes and specific limitations of bond issues. That's interesting. My computer rolled. There we go. Okay. This is chapter 210306, purposes and specific limitations of bond issues. Municipalities are empowered to borrow money subject to the general limitations of amounts prescribed by sections 210304 and 210305, which are the previous the proceedings. Let's see here. That's just grant, that stipulates the granting of the ability to do things. So how we have to go and ask the people basically. Okay, so such bonds may be issued by any county specifically to provide county buildings and to acquire land for county purposes, but all outstanding unpaid bonds for this purpose may not exceed in amount at any one time 5% of the value of taxable property in such county. To construct, enlarge, or repair, or aid in the construction, enlargement, or repair of bridges within or without the county, but all outstanding unpaid bonds for this purpose may not exceed in amount at any one time 1% of the value of taxable property in the county. To provide funds for the original construction and for the improvement and maintenance of highways, but all outstanding unpaid bonds for these purposes may not exceed in amount at any time 4% of the value of taxable property in such county. To provide funds for the construction of solid waste disposal facilities, facilities for that. To provide money for the payment of any deficiency in the fund of any special improvement district whenever the special assessment or taxes levied and collected for the specific improvements are insufficient to pay for the principal or interest of any special improvement warrants or bonds issued for the improvement and due and unpaid, but only to the extent of that deficiency. To provide funds for the acquiring, laying out, equipping, and improving parks and recreational facilities and to acquire land for these purposes. To provide funds to purchase not to exceed 240 acres of real estate and construct buildings and improvements for the conduct of a county fair. Then it's got city, public school, school district, township. This gets really complicated. Holy man. Well, there's like a whole paragraph talking about just refunding outstanding bonds with, I think, the issuance of new bonds.
And that's,
Yeah. How I read it, it says, So this is just, it says by any municipality as herein defined, so county, city, township, school district. For the purpose of paying any final judgment obtained against the municipality within the state of North Dakota in case the governing body does not deem it advisable to pay such judgment out of current revenues. So if we got sued and we had to come up with money, we could bond for it. In case the bonds authorized by this subsection cannot be sold in accordance with this chapter, they may be issued to the judgment creditor in payment of such judgment. Wow, that's a little dicey. To provide necessary funds for the payment of the principal and interest of bonds of such municipality due or about to become due for the payment of which the municipality has not sufficient funds, but only to the extent of such deficit, or to refund outstanding bonds of the municipality which are called for redemption, and prepayments in accordance with their terms, or by the consent of the holders thereof within 6 months from the date of the refunding bonds, when in the judgment of the governing body the best interests of the municipality will be served thereby through the reduction of interest cost or the extension of maturities. Holy man. To refund outstanding bonds not yet due or to become due or subject to redemption and prepayment within 6 months, when in the judgment of the governing body the best interests of the municipality will be served thereby through the reduction of debt service costs or the extension of adjustment of maturities in relation to the resources available for their payment. The proceeds of the refunding bonds, including any premium and accrued interest, must be deposited in escrow with a suitable bank or trust company. Oh, I'm not going to read the rest of this. My God. Essentially, it's saying that you can, if you don't have the money at the end of a bond payment to pay it off, you can rebond the bonds, but no more than what's remaining on the outstanding bond.
Okay.
Which is interesting. I don't know if that's good fiscal policy, just continuing to kick the can down the road, not paying off your bonds when you have a bond until, but I suppose that would be an option. I don't know where that would come into effect, I guess. I think it's interesting that they lay out the percentage of taxable valuation in each county for each stipulation, and where do they come up with that 4-3 or 1 or 4-5 or 1? I honestly don't know. That would probably be a Terry Trainer question from the Association of Counties. They were probably in there on that when that all went in, I suppose, at some one point in time.
Here's history of
What's our taxable valuation?
Right now,
Yes,
dollar-wise.
yes.
57.
So we couldn't bond for roads more than 4% of our taxable valuation? So we can't do more than like 2.2 million then, of bonding authority for roads then? That's not much of a road project anymore.
Well, I think that last one that we did was,
But we haven't bonded for a road in a long time, since we've been lucky and had state money to pay for it.
Yep.
But 4% really doesn't go very far when you kind of guess we're county. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know if that answers any questions. Yeah, I don't
What was the
understand.
question?
Yeah. He's just saying, can we,
Please repeat the question.
yeah, should we have the ability?
I'm sorry,
yeah,
but-
should we have the ability to rebond a bond issuance? I guess we could stipulate we can't, but I think that might be kind of short-sighted.
That's closing the door on
Yeah.
sometime when you may actually need that ability.
Yeah, yeah, and like I
I
said,
think it's smarter to either just define when you're gonna allow that, in an extraordinary situation or something more than from time to time. But
yeah,
I don't think you wanna close that door.
Okay.
yeah, and just I'm thinking the same way, just because of the
Well,
example I gave. What if you had a $2 million bridge project?
Well, that,
I don't think you wanna change too much than what's written here.
right.
But Anthony's going back to what he first said was what did from time to time, correct, Anthony?
Yeah, it's that renewed from time to time that I'm
That he was concerned with.
concerned with, so.
That's kind of a vague statement.
I'm not entirely sure what to replace it with, is the worst part of the question.
That's why I say just leave it the way it is.
Okay.
Well, and the reality is if people perceive that
It's being
your
abused, we
governing
have,
body is not being fiscally responsible, they're gonna vote in a new governing body.
Right.
yeah,
So,
or amended.
Well, so if you had an emergency and you issued a bond, because of the emergency, hypothetically, that bond should have a time frame on it.
Yeah,
I mean, in 10 years or
Yes.
whatever it's gonna be, depending on bond size and everything like that, so I mean,
Can't that just be taken out, that which may be renewed from time to time, that statement, can't that just be taken out?
that's the lawyer.
well,
Then it's implied.
it kinda has to be there.
I think it's okay, I mean, I think you want it, I
For the
agree
following
with
sentence.
Rodney, it should be pretty much what's there.
So then we just use it as is.
So then that last sentence of it basically says that we can't take a bond up for more than 1 year.
But the emergency notes and rules of this.
That's how I'm
fiscal
reading
year
that
may be
next
paid.
section.
So that's what I'm thinking, that we wanna adjust that, so we have the flexibility to take out an emergency bond for a longer term, but not renew it.
That's a good point. Yeah. So if you had to bond a big project, it's basically saying you've got at
One
most
fiscal-
24 months. Because say it happens January
Yeah.
2 of this year, you've got until the year, the December 31st of the
Of your
subsequent
next-
year to pay for it,
Yep,
and renewals can't count.
yep,
Boy, that's really,
Yeah, they must
Kind of
have
a
stayed
tight
no
time
later
frame.
than the last day of the fiscal year. Next succeeding, at which the emergency appropriation was made.
Well, then you can go from the mandatory must to the discretionary should.
we're saying you can.
You should make every effort.
Should.
Um, I think it's just overall, well, yeah.
I'm just looking at it from the concept of a hypothetical. I mean,
Well,
hopefully that
I'm
never
looking at it
happens.
from a different hypothetical, but the same type of hypothetical, where you have to get this large sum of cash inflow for something you weren't prepared for.
yep.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it may take more than 2 periods to pay it back, assuming it happens on January.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I just use, I think like a bridge or something is probably the best example I can think of, simply because our county budget last year, total assessed county dollars were like $6 million.
Yeah.
So if you had a bridge collapse or something, and I don't know what it would cost to replace Bellegarde, but I would guess $1.5 million.
Assuming no state funds.
Yeah, assuming you don't have a state fund, you'd
Yeah.
be talking like $1.5 million, so you gotta pay $1.5 million back within the next fiscal year, and you don't have any appropriated funds this year to do it.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to tax through a mill levy to pay for that $1.5 million the next year, and you might not have the capability even to raise that kind of capital through general fund dollars.
Right.
On top of your bridge fund. Because we're capped out on mill levies,
But if you
or total
could,
mills.
this could be changed. If you start writing something different than this in there, then I think, I don't know. I guess-
No, I think you could just delete the last sentence to a point. I mean, just, they can be renewed.
Yeah,
They don't have to, then just say they don't have to be paid back by that next fiscal year.
right.
So ended at renewed, the sentence? Is that-
Essentially, you could, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that's what we should do, but I'm just saying you could.
Which may be renewed.
Or you could say something as, simple as the renewal has to be paid back, the bonds have to be paid back by the end of that renewal. You can't renew a renewal, basically.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
So in other words, you get an issuance of bonds.
So you have the emergency issuance.
You have a renewal.
See, and are emergency bonds legally, is there like a technical, is there emergency bonds versus regular
Regular
issue
bonds?
bonds?
Oh, probably,
And I'm not a bonding agent, so I have no idea.
See, my assumption in reading that last sentence was that you could take out your emergency bond and continue to renew that same emergency bond, or you could take out that emergency bond and pay it off with a normal bond in your next budget, which would then get you out of that 2-year limitation.
See, I read that differently. To me, it's, you can take out the regular, well, so, that's a good point. So is it an emergency bond that is continually renewed, Or do you have to, it's basically saying you have to convert an emergency bond to a regular issuance bond within that period, within the next fiscal year.
Yeah.
Maybe we ought to check with the bonding
Yeah,
agent to
I agree.
actually see.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea, otherwise we're just gonna keep talking ourselves in
Yeah.
circles here. Okay, so can we make a note that we should ask a bonding agent, whoever we're, the guy out of Minneapolis we deal with, isn't it? We can ask him the difference between, for clarification on emergency bonds versus regular bonding issuance, and then we can come back to it at the next meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Okay. So do you want to, let's see, I'll read the next one, we'll see if we want to deal with it or not then. Number 2, no appropriation for debt service may be reduced or transferred, and no appropriation may be reduced below any amount required by law to be appropriated or by more than the amount of the unencumbered balance. The supplemental and emergency appropriations authorized by this section may be made effective immediately upon adoption. I think that's fairly boilerplate, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
It's what?
I think it's pretty boilerplate, I mean, I think it's pretty standard sounding language, it's nothing
I
specific.
can't see whether you can change, where you can change anything in there.
Yeah, it's basically saying if the state says we have to do something, or the feds say we have a baseline number, we have to pay it. It's pretty much similar to that language up top that we already adopted, that says no adoption can increase or decrease expenditures
Right.
required by law. You know, so. I guess that's my reading of it. Do I have a motion to adopt it, or should I?
Motion to adopt it as read.
Okay.
Pending section, or part 1.
Okay,
I'll second that.
so are we just adopting that section?
Just the second
Number 2?
one.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll come back to 1 later.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt section 6, number 2, and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries and number 2 is adopted. Okay,
Well, we're just adopting that part,
just that number 2,
Yeah.
yeah.
that part 2, yeah.
I'm just gonna make a note that we're researching that first one and we'll come back to it. That way I can fill Lucas in on what happened. Okay, section 7, lapse of appropriations. Every appropriation except an appropriation for a capital expenditure will lapse at the close of the fiscal year to the extent that it has not been expended or encumbered. An appropriation for a capital expenditure will continue in force until expended, revised, or repealed. Okay?
Well, that's pretty much standard, I would say.
Yeah, it's just basically saying you can't budget across your fiscal year.
No,
Yeah.
No.
That's pretty
I'll
standard.
move that we adopt that part of it.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion and a second to adopt section 7 verbatim. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, pose same sign, motion carries. Okay, section 8, administration of the budget. The Board of County Commissioner, should be commissioners, will provide by resolution the procedures for administering the budget.
Done.
Well, I know, but a resolution is a short-term statement of what's going to occur. So is it saying we have to make a resolution every year to tell the department heads to get the budget together?
How you want it.
Or how we want it every year, basically?
Yeah.
I guess kind of implied.
Doesn't make sense.
We have the purse strings, isn't it kind of how we always just, I guess we never make a formal resolution though, you know what I mean? Is this saying we have to have a formal resolution?
I know how I read it, basically
Yeah.
it's, if you have a couple of departments that aren't liking you right now.
Yeah, because basically all we've ever said is, you know, whenever we get, just for clarification's sake, whenever we budget, it's like, okay, we have Candy talk to
Yeah.
HR or whatever, we figure out the cost of living, we figure out the steps, and then we tell the department heads what we want to put in the budget in terms of increases and all that. and we figure out the insurance cost increase, we throw all that in, and we tell them to put their budgets together, but there's no formal resolution.
Right.
Move to strike.
Okay, we have a motion to strike section 8. Do we have a second? Ooh, might die for lack of a second.
Well, and I can wait and have further discussion too. You could also just flat out statement, Board of County Commissioners will provide the procedures for administering the budget. Take out your resolution.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was kind of thinking that.
Yeah.
That way it doesn't need a formal resolution and we can just give the procedures. I think you think that would be reasonable?
Yes.
Anthony's thinking
I just look at that whole section and go, duh.
Well, I think the only, I know we're talking with the motion, but anyway, I think the only reason that that's prescribed simply is because we do have department heads that are in charge of their departments
That's a good point.
that are elected.
Yeah.
So if you had an elected department head that said, I don't want to give you my budget,
I
or
want to
something,
get
if somebody
this
wanted to
way.
raise a ruckus, I'm not saying that would happen, but hypothetically, Candy could tell me, and
Just
say,
give
I'm
me
not
the
gonna,
numbers."
I'm not gonna give it to you on time, or I'm gonna give it to you in whatever form I feel.
I'm gonna give it to you as the whole pie and not the slices.
Yes, or, you know, maybe
Yeah.
she wants to write it in iambic pentameter or something like that. Just-
Name every dollar using ticker tape. That's
Yeah.
how we, yeah.
But, yeah,
For her
so
only.
basically
Number
it's
one.
just,
For her only.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's how I read it, basically. Is that okay then?
In that case, how do you kill that motion?
You can just withdraw.
Withdraw.
The motion has been withdrawn. Would you like to make a motion to just strike by resolution and then take the section and leave it?
So moved.
So moved. We have a motion to strike the words by resolution in section 8. And just so it will read, the Board of County Commissioners will provide the procedures for administering the budget. That is the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second for the discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Okay.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries and that is adopted. That gets us through the end of that article. Awesome. Okay, it is 3:20. We've been at it for a couple hours now. So I'll just ask the question of everyone. Let me look and see where it was going.
I'd like to propose the consideration of Article 9 of Cass County for their next meeting.
Oh, you want to go to the next meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next meeting then, we will have, the proposal is to, that would basically probably be the last section we will handle.
Yep.
I would guess, and then if we have the whole document then put together as a whole, and we work on that section, then we can probably be prepared to go through the whole document one more time then.
Correct.
To see if we made any mistakes or everything guides type of thing.
Yep.
Ideas, Rodney? Look like you had something to say.
I guess I would, yeah, we've gotta come to an end,
Oh, yeah.
Yep. That should be next
because
meeting.
we're gonna have to go over this maybe more than once to get this down to where we think that we can put it before the public, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, unless we think we can, knock through this section 9 quickly. I mean, I'm reading it right now.
What
It's
is the title of Cass's section?
Revenue authority and limitations. So it's got the scope of authority basically laying out the taxation possibilities.
Yep.
And in all honesty, that's, some of those there are, I think all those are probably still something you can have, but there's been some in state law that have been stricken now.
Okay.
And then limitations would have to do with the total mill levy. That number is gonna be discussed, obviously, what we wanna set that total mill levy cap at. And then the other ones, I think, are fairly boilerplate to a point.
Somewhat. This is gonna be the sticking point though from our meetings, or our community input
Yeah.
meetings, so it'd be a good idea to spend some time on it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Would that be okay if everyone, if we're prepared for that revenue authority and limitations article, kind of how Cass County has it reading for the next meeting?
Yep.
And then we can be prepared then we'll have the whole rest of the document stuck together. And then we can just be prepared to at least start going through that document again on a second pass through.
So Article 9 of CAS, revenue authority and limitations,
That's right.
that's the one, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, Article 9 of CAS is gonna be kind of where we can, as a baseline to work off of. Doesn't mean that's what we have to have, but we'll use that as the baseline.
right. And then we'll go over the section 1 of Article 11 that we will, you'll.
Yes,
check with that.
yeah, and we'll have the research done on that, and then just be prepared, I suppose, to start going through the document a second time, just to make sure that we don't see any problems where maybe we have an article labeled wrong,
Sure,
or if there's any changes still to be made where maybe people aren't comfortable with how it reads, because I know we've had some meetings when some people weren't here.
Yep.
And things like that, so we could go back and discuss
okay.
at that point.
Is there a possibility we could get Cass counties plus all the edits that we've currently made in a new Word document with the meeting minutes?
Candy will send out everything that's,
Sorry.
no, she has been, though. Everything that's edited.
I
up
know
to
it's
this
been
point is
awesome so far, that's why I asked for it again.
Yeah,
You want it again?
right. She'll make all the changes and then send out an
Yeah.
updated document up to what we have now.
Yeah,
And
that way
then-
we can rename Cass counties as whatever article it's going to be and we don't have to.
I'll just maybe,
Yeah, and we might wanna
Do that.
reshuffle where they're at too,
Yeah.
just so it reads
Yeah,
easier in terms of we talking this and then budget and this, you know.
maybe what I do, maybe what I'll do, I'm just thinking out loud right now, but maybe what I'll just do is I'll scan that section of Cass County and attach it with everything,
sure.
so that
Yeah, that'd be a good.
it's like totally separate from what we've done, but yet,
Yeah. And then if we have a provided, could you provide copies for us, so we have them here, because that way we can just X out stuff on that section when we're working on it.
depends
And
on.
we're killing trees
Or you
anyway.
can email it.
Yeah, she can email it.
That's what next meeting is.
Yeah, well, so when's the next one?
And
Yeah, let's-
Oh, wait,
So,
we gotta
Get
finish
back on
that.
track here.
Yeah, already.
okay, well, you do that in motion form. So the motion is from Anthony to be prepared to work on section 9 out of Cass County as a baseline document. Then we will deal with that Article 11.1 after we get some research done, and be prepared to start gleaning through the document from front to back again for the next meeting.
That one is concerning the bonding thing.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
we'll have
the
some
11
research by
section.
that point,
11.
so. So that is the motion on the table to put, start there at the next meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Next meeting date, what are we looking at? I don't have a calendar. Let's see, it's March 14th today. What day works for people?
Are you thinking in March still?
We could do last part of March sometime, or that first week of April. I don't know.
I'm gone from the 21st through the 30th of March.
Okay,
Where are you going?
Wow.
Vegas.
vacation time, and I'll be gone that last week of March for a couple of days too.
Well, then let's do it in March.
The next
yeah.
week of March, I'm booked completely upstairs.
What now?
Oh, we gotta
That
go
last week of
April.
March?
We
No,
gotta
no,
go April.
Yeah.
Third week of March, I'm.
Oh, so this
Where are we?
19th through the 23rd, you're gonna be,
I am
Court.
busy court every day. Yep.
well, it sounds to me like we're
March is
kinda,
shot.
shot for the end of March then.
Okay, let's go to April 5th.
Okay,
Thursday then?
April 5th or April
Or-
4th?
Sorry.
April 4th,
Is that a Thursday?
that is a Wednesday.
April 4th is a Wednesday.
Wednesdays are typically.
We want Carrie here. I like it when Carrie's here.
Wednesdays are
Yeah.
typically better for me.
Yeah, I like it when we have you here too,
That
then we
works.
have, we can bounce
Kind of
questions
put
off
things
each
on
other.
an even keel.
Yeah,
that
we
way.
can't, the lawyer.
So April 4th seems
Yeah.
to be okay for everyone
The
up to this
auditor
point?
just walked
I
out to check.
don't think I'm gonna have a problem with that either, so that's. what-
12th is not good for me, so I
Yeah.
can't get.
4th or the 11th would be, and I'm just gonna be honest, earlier.
Yes.
Earlier in April is better
Yes.
for me too, cause I don't foresee we're gonna be farming by then, but I'm
Yeah, well,
I'm
that's.
starting to get equipment ready tomorrow already, so
Already?
I'm be ready to roll.
April 4th, okay, Ken?
Been hauling grain for the last week and a half.
After that, then I'll be
For,
in there,
Right, yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
you've got.
cause I'll start with election stuff.
well, we gotta start rolling on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the 4th is okay though? And if you can't be here cause you got election stuff to do,
Well,
we can
Yeah.
find a way to
That
do it.
really works for me, because then the next week start up with jury trials and some
Okay.
other things. points, so.
So April 4th seems to be the best date for everybody, 1:30 again, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we get a motion accordingly?
So moved.
Don't move.
Okay, we have a motion, we'll cover on as a second, to have our next meeting, April 4th, 1:30 PM in this room. We have a motion and a second, further discussion, seeing none. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Pull same sign. Motion carries, and we are adjourned.